My name is Kacper. This is Greta joining us as well as a fellow speaker. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and everybody's all over the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to give you a little bit more background about basically ROC and our way of working. So we believe in asynchronous and distributed work first. So what that basically means is we're in this era where a lot of people are remote working. There's a lot of people in physical locations, and we have so many different tools that we have to click through, and we have to get through one tool and another, and that takes a lot of time. And when we're actually having these discussions that we could be having on a lot of these tools, we're having most of them still in meetings and in person and very synchronously, which takes a lot of time, takes a lot of emails, and it goes back and forth, but then it's not always properly noted down, and you can't really refer back to all the materials to follow the same processes or follow the same workflows. So essentially, this is where ROC comes in, where we want to be a hub for all-in-one, getting everything done, allowing you to have your communication, your project management, your files, your notes, and also integrating with other platforms, such as allowing you to start a meeting directly from when you do want to have that synchronous activity. So we're basically on a mission to empower everybody to work from anywhere and at any time that you want, and also allowing you to work when you need to work and not just be online for those 9 to 5 hours that you need to be online, but actually work during those productive hours of your day. So that's where our platform comes in. I'm going to hand it over to Greta to give you a little bit more about creating spaces and how you can get started with ROC.
Yeah, so hello, everyone. My name is Greta. Thank you, Kacper, for such a nice introduction. And yes, then let's jump in straight on ROC. If you could share your screen, then we can start from there. I'll just request the control. Are you able to grant me the control, Kacper? Yeah, okay. Can you see that I'm moving the mouse? All right. So yeah, let's start with the first thing which you do basically when you start using our platform. So you always begin with creating spaces. We have two options for creating spaces. So one is a group space, and the other one is one-on-one space. So to give you a brief introduction on what the difference between those is. So one-on-one space basically serves as a private space between you and one more individual. So it's like you can think about it as a private chat. And a group space is a space where you can invite more members, more colleagues of yours, and there is no limit on people that you can add to those spaces. So it can be your entire company, it can be a space for your specific client, it can be just like a team which works on a specific project within your company. So this is completely up to you how you want to organize your spaces. So right here you can see that we have a selection of templates that you can choose. This is optional, you don't have to use them, but if you want to, you can, for example, select a project management template, which gives you some kind of guidance how to design your task board based on project management type of work, right? You also create your space name and a short description over there, so it's pretty self-explanatory when you go through it. And the important thing that I want to emphasize here, so how do you get people on ROC? Like how do you start and how you invite your colleagues? So there are two ways to do that. One is a share invite link. So the one that you see on top here, you can copy it and then you can send it, for example, before you used, I don't know, WhatsApp to communicate with your colleagues, you have a WhatsApp chat, you just copy that link and people join via that link. So once they are on ROC, it's way easier for you to connect with them because they already have an account and they are among your contacts. The other way is to add their email addresses. So you basically copy and paste their email addresses, and that's how they they can be invited, so they get an email and then they click join, and that's basically very quick way to get people on Rock. So once you do that, you can go on settings, and these are the main settings that you have to think through before starting everything. So it's very good to look over it. I will not go through every single thing, I guess, right now, but most important things is that you can invite more people anytime. So if you know you missed somebody, you can always click on invite right here, and yeah, exactly, you can add members. And another thing that's important is member roles. So here you see, if you scroll down, you will see everybody who has been invited to that space. And you, as a creator of that space, you're an admin, so you have all the rights, well, most of the rights compared to other people to organize things in the space. So you can remove users' messages and manage other user roles. And other people can be set also as admins if you see that somebody needs the same rights as you, or they can be added as members who have rights to invite other members, create, edit, delete tasks and notes, and manage also cloud storage services. Or you can add, as a third option, add people as guests, so they have a little bit less rights. So if you think about an example, maybe you want to add your client as a guest who has an overview of what's happening in the space, but maybe they have a little less rights, they cannot add other members, so as an example. So this is very important before you start work, to make sure that everyone is invited and make sure that everyone has the roles that you want them to have, so you know that you have control over the whole space. So you can of course look through some smaller settings, but these are the main ones. So for the sake of time, I will hand over to Kacper here, since the settings are ready. Then you basically, and you have everyone in the space, you're basically ready to get started. And let's start them with tasks. And I hand over to Kacper here.
Yes, thanks so much, Greta. So when we have tasks, we have this mini app here. You click on it and you have 3 different views. I will go back to the views after I go into a little bit more detail about the tasks themselves. So essentially, I'm going to start with the board view. The board view looks similar to what you might have experienced in Trello, but it also is very similar to what you would experience with Post-it notes, where you kind of write down what you needed to do and then maybe put them in the different lanes that need to be in. So this should follow a standard workflow across a certain space. So as you see here in a project management space, you have the to-do space. So this space would be where you start creating all those new tasks that you start to work on, or you want to work on in the future. Then you have the doing space, which would be all the things that you're currently worked on. And as you see here, you have the blocked awaiting review. So this would be something that is particular to your workflow. But I will go over these lines in a little bit more detail. The reason why I started mentioning them is that you'll recognize this list area here, which corresponds to all of the different lanes that are there. So essentially, when you're doing something, when you're, instead of sending a message, instead of writing up that long email to your colleagues, once again, that might get lost along the way, and asking them to do something and then CCing a bunch of people that might not be so relevant to this email, is being able to avoid this with tasks. Essentially what you do is you try to summarize that action item or something that you want to follow up on, or whatever that may be that is more action oriented in this task. So you basically, in this example, it would say finalizing a contract with a freelancer. Then here mention the client, just to make it a little bit more specific. Then you go into the priority. Well, if this is something that is a lot more important and you want to make sure that it gets done within this week, or it might become that this client will be very disappointed if you don't prioritize this, then you can also indicate the priority setting, and you can these are preset here, so you have urgent, high, medium. And then you have this assignee section. So the assignee section allows you to basically indicate who is responsible for this task. In this case, Ashi and Kacper would be responsible for this specific task. The other section that is related to this would be the followers section. So the followers section here would still enable you to track the process. So this would be maybe a manager, or maybe this is a task that you've assigned to a team and you're a project manager and you keep following up on it, but you don't want to indicate that you're actually responsible for it. So you use this followers section where you can just click on the people that need to follow and be updated about this task and what's happening in it, but you won't be actually responsible for it. Then you have the assignee status. So let's say this is a task with multiple items to do. And so Ashi might be doing a certain part of it, and Kacper in this case would be doing another part of it. Well, you can indicate how far you are within this task, whether you're actually working on it in progress, whether this is none, whether it's blocked maybe by somebody else or some other department, or whether you've already completed your part and it's time to move forward. Then you will have this start date. I will go back to this section in a bit. So then you can indicate your start date. Obviously, when you create a task, you might have this initial idea where, okay, I really want to work on this, but unfortunately, I don't really have time this month. Well, that's where you go to the start date, where you can just indicate when you would like to begin on this and when you expect to be done with it. In the description here, you would basically add all that body of that email that you would write, but essentially it would be very much just related to what this task is about. You can just summarize basically why this is happening. Maybe some of your objectives would go here, and basically all the details necessary. You have your editing options for underlining, italics, and others, as well as an option to hyperlink. Then there's the checklist section. So as I mentioned previously, you have this, you can just break this up into the different tasks that are related to finalizing the contract. So maybe this is creating a contract. Maybe this is receiving agreement from the client. And this might be done by different people. That's why we have this nice option within Rock where you can mention the specific task. Maybe there's another task that is related to this. So you want to break it up so that you get specific reminders for the different tasks that are going on. Or maybe you want to be able to mention a note or an attachment that is specific to just that point in the checklist. Well, you can mention things from across different spaces as well, and you can even mention who is assigned to it. So let's say that Kacper is responsible for creating the contract, and the contract can be found in task 3. Well, you mention it directly to here, so you have that overview, and you can look back on it and see if it isn't finalized or if it is finalized. And then once Kacper is done with this part, he can check that it's completed and also check off this point so that you can know that this task is progressing currently. So you have, so once the task is saved, you always need to remember to save your tasks. Things are not automatically saved. So you would always have to make sure to click that save button. And then the other part here is the activity section. So obviously I didn't create a new task here. So there's already previous activity happening. Well, anytime that there's any updates that are being done, so the task is created, or for example, the dates are moved, or anything that is really being changed upon this task, it shows you directly in this activity section. And once again, you can always mention, let's say you're interested, why did Megan change the assignees? You can always Megan and ask her for an update about why she did this. And the reason why this is important is because it allows you to have that continuity that sometimes you're missing when you have that email thread and it's going on forever, and then that colleague leaves. You don't have access to those emails, and it's very hard to contact your IT department or try to get that information back. Meanwhile, here you can have all of that within a task. And also, when there's multiple people in the project management space and a lot of them might not be working on this task, it might be very annoying to keep this conversation in the chat section and continuing to get those updates from other people. So essentially, you keep all of the conversations related to this task within the task itself, and it allows you to look back on it. Let's say you're finalizing another contract and you know, hey, maybe I could have improved this process. Well, you go right back to this task and you can see point for point how this process was before and look at maybe the follow-up of where did we go wrong here and identify those weaker points and improve as you go forward. So it allows you for documentation, continuity within your company, but it also allows you to just track the process nice and easily by getting notified of the different information that is taking place and being shared within here. I also skipped over this attachment section. Essentially here, you can just attach something directly from your files, from your cloud storage, and anything else that is unrocked that you want to upload on here. We'll go a little bit more into detail about files later. There's also the sections of custom fields and sprint. For the sake of time, we will not go too much into detail as these are pro features. As you see here, these are locked in pro. If you are interested in pro, we will provide you with our emails at the end. So we're always more than happy to provide you with a specific onboarding on pro or give you more details about that. And then, as you might have noticed, we have this labels section, and you see here finance and client bamboo. Well, as you click here, you can add any label that you might want that is relevant to this space. But essentially how labels work is that they allow you to keep that space organized, because you're probably thinking, okay, I created this task and I have so many different tasks within this space. How am I going to stay organized? This might be difficult for me. Well, we allow you to create these labels that then help you filter out the space that you're looking at. So essentially, if you are somebody working in the finance department within this project management space, and you just want to see the finance tasks, you can just click on this labels filter and be able to find all of the relevant tasks for your department. The same goes for many different filters. So, I mean, you can also do it by client. You can also separate yourself by project. We have also many other different neat filters. So you have the due date where you can just look at past due date tasks, or maybe something that's due in the next 7 days that you don't want to miss. You can also have the updated ones, which essentially shows you the tasks that have been recently changed and updated. And there's also, you can also filter out by assignee status. So maybe you want to check up on the tasks that are not really progressing, or maybe the ones that have been blocked. And you can also filter by person. So let's say you are a manager and you want to see what the workload of some of your team members are. You can just click directly on each of these members and you can filter out for the ones that are most relevant to you. We also have this quick updated button where basically you see the difference between the color of these tasks. And what that enables you to do is that the tasks which are a little bit like bluish or purplish, essentially, this allows you to filter out for just the updated tasks, and then you can just go directly to the ones that have been recently changed. So we've seen how the tasks work, and now you might be wondering, okay, what are the different views here? So if you are not really interested, if you look at these different lists, there's this check mark next to the done list. So how do I complete a task? I created a task, and what am I going to do next? Well, if you would like to complete a task, you would need to move the task into one of the check marked lists. And that list can really be any one of the lists that you want them to be. So let's say your workflow is a little bit different and you have the edit and order, and you already want to mark things as completed when they're awaiting review because essentially they're finished. Well, you can just click it off and then you see this check mark appearing, which means that once you move that task into that space, it will be marked as completed and that task is completely done and closed. So it depends on your workflow. As I said, you can edit the lists as you want. You can reorder them so that it fits the common flow of how you would like to run the space. You also have this list view that enables you to then see it a lot neater if you're more interested in the lists. And you also have the corresponding workflows as I showed you. So the corresponding lists in the board view are also visible directly into here. So you have all this information presented in a different way, and you have this updated section at the end that shows you when things have been happening. So you see, okay, well, I just updated this, and you see the due date, so you might not want to prioritize this. But the red due dates, these are the ones that are overdue. So in case you have these, you might want to take a look and go back and see, okay, well, why isn't this completed? How far are we? So it enables you to just kind of get that information much quicker. You also can filter out for closed tasks. So right now they're shown, but if you finalize tasks, they will not be shown if you check this off. Also completed by me. So that's if you have that completed status that I showed you earlier, you can filter out for the ones that you're done with, but maybe the task is not done because another colleague is working on it. And then for the calendar view, we also have the due dates that I previously showed you, where you have your start date and your end date. And here, for example, the start date and date is on one day, but then there's obviously longer projects. So you can go back and forth and see visually and also filter out for the most relevant information here and seeing how busy was your day. Well, we were feeling like February is really busy. Maybe we should get a lot less work done in March because we weren't able to get into it. So let's maybe lower our expectations, or maybe February is kind of laid back. Let's take on a little bit bigger projects or maybe more projects. So this also helps you look at your information in a more visual way and then directly go into the task and edit it from the side here. And here you see, okay, it's blocked and they're blocked due to ongoing contracts. And then you can check and you can reply directly into here to ask Ashi what's going on with that contract so that you can keep that project moving along, stay action oriented, and make sure that everything is being done and not getting lost within all the different noise. So now I've explained you all of the different activities and essentially how the tasks are going, but there's obviously other things that need to get done within a company, such as discussions or announcements or sharing of files, which you can all do in Rock. And that's why I'm going to give it back to my colleague, Greta, to go over those sections of the board. Greta?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so let's maybe start with topics. That's I think our newest mini app, which I personally really like. So basically, topics mini app allows you to organize your conversations better and helps you to discuss things more asynchronously. So you can basically see it as a thread that is more structured, and you can find those important conversations easier. So just to give you an example, let's say like we are 10 people in the project management space, right? And we have this main chat, which we use, but you know, it happens to everyone sometimes that you just start discussing something which is kind of specific and relevant only to a certain amount of people, but not to everybody in the space. And then you have it in the main chat, then those people who don't have it, so don't find it so relevant, they still get notifications and they might write something in between. So everything gets quite messy and not that structured anymore. So what you can do if you start developing this conversation in the chat, you can actually use tap and organize feature. If you, Kacper, could just click on that to show what I mean. So if there were several messages that you feel like, okay, we might develop a conversation on that, but that's not relevant to everybody, let's just get it structured. So you click on this little button on the side of the message, right? And you select messages which you want to transform into a topic, and you can just move them to a topic by, yes, exactly right here. And yeah, that's how you create a topic, and you make sure that you don't lose those messages that were relevant. You can add the title of the topic. Yes, whatever you're discussing, let's say ideas for your new social media campaign or pricing discussion. It can be anything. You add a little description so everybody who is in that discussion knows what we are actually talking about or what's the goal of it. The main difference between tasks is really that you don't really have to do anything specific here, but it's really about discussion, about brainstorming, developing ideas, and keeping everything in one space. So that's how you create it from the chat. If you decide to move to a topic, you can also go straight to topics and add it right there. If you, for example, discuss something in the meeting before, let's say, or had an idea that you want to discuss with your team, you create a topic from here. And then, yeah, let's just create one as an example. Yeah, so let's click on add topic. And just to quickly mention that here you can add followers. So when you click on followers, you can select people from the space which you want to be involved, and only those people are going to get notifications and going to be involved. So others are not going to be bothered by that. If they want to find it, they can go to topics and they can find it if at some point that becomes relevant. But you just make sure that people who don't need to get additional distractions, they don't. So that's, yeah, just see it as threads, a structured way to keep your conversations. All right, so that's shortly in topics. Let's move on to notes. Notes are basically really helpful for some, for let's say sharing information on meeting notes, on some company announcements. It might be also agenda points. Just see it as a notebook where you can add this information that is relevant to everybody. So here it's very also self-explanatory. There is this blue plus sign which you click on, and then you can create a note. You just basically add the text. Also can add followers. You are able to add attachments to the notes if there is something that you want to visualize. For example, you can add an attachment. You have certain formatting options, and then again you can add followers. So there are people who might be involved in something. For example, if it's meeting notes, you may add people who were part of that meeting, so they always know that they can find those points by going to notes. And anybody in the space can of course add add followers there. Yeah, so I think that's briefly it on notes. If you have questions, of course, feel free to ask for more if anything is unclear. And then let's go to files briefly as well. So right here you have options to add cloud services. If you want to connect your whatever cloud service you use, you want to connect it with Rock. So it's way smoother connection. So if you take an example as Google Drive, I can connect my Google Drive and I can connect a folder from my Google Drive, which then is very easily accessible through Rock, and anyone who is in that space can access it. Important point to mention that if you connect your Google Drive, let's say, you have to also make sure that on your Google Drive, you also grant access to certain people that you want to be able to access it. So it's an integration, but you also have to make sure that on the side of the service provider, you also grant the rights to see the files. So that's basically very easy. You don't need to send any links anymore. You connect your folder and then everyone can access files. Yes, and there is also an option to see Rock files if you go back. Yes, so Rock files here, over here, you have a list of all the files that have been shared in the space, whether it was in the chat or in the tasks. So it's also easier if you want to just find some PDF file or a picture that was shared, you can always go here and scroll down and look what has been uploaded. Yeah, so that's briefly on files. And then, yeah, let's move forward with chat and my tasks briefly, Kacper.
Yeah, of course. So thank you so much for that. So essentially you have this space and there's a lot going on, and you can obviously always look through the space, so you can click here and search through if you want to search a specific keyword that you're looking for. You also have this activity section that essentially shows you all the things they're doing. So right now I'm Megan, and Megan has been making the updates during these times. So basically, you see all of the activity that is happening in here. And so you have your action-oriented items and the tasks, you have your discussions within your topics, and then you have your announcements and your notes. So what do we even use chat for? Well, the chat can always still be a good space for you to have conversations with your team about things that are maybe relevant to a larger group of people, such as, hey, everyone, has this sprint been ready? Or maybe you're just sharing an announcement with everybody. Can everybody help you? Or it's just a quick question to the team and you're not really sure who to ask. So that's why we enable a very quick way for you to just type in things through. You can always reply in a thread, which then allows you to have a much better thread here. But also you can just reply directly into here and mention what I showed you in the tasks and notes and in topics. You essentially can mention the people that are relevant to you, or even a space and a task from a different space that you want to mention in this space. So app mention really allows you to connect all the different things that are within Rock in your message. You also have the option to directly from here start a poll. So let's say that you want to have some anonymous feedback about how your team is doing, or maybe you're asking, how's the workload on this project? You can just directly create a poll and send it through so that your team can vote on the different things that are important to you to discuss in a much quicker manner. You also have these voice messages. So as you see here, you can record a voice note, so you don't have to type out this long message. You can just send out this voice note at everybody so that they can listen to it back whenever they have some time. And you have these easy ways of starting and creating a task, discard changes, notes, and topics directly from here. So you don't have to click through all the mini apps. You can just go directly from these buttons and you can create everything from here. And we do have start a meeting. So obviously, we're trying to push more of the asynchronous and distributed work model forward, because we believe that we should be working based on our productivity and based on the things that we should be focusing on, rather than just always committing times to meetings that could have been an email, and then emails that just drag on forever and nothing really gets done with them. But there are definitely discussions that need to be done synchronously. Maybe you just really don't understand what your colleague is writing about, or maybe you just really want to be able to discuss something in person. Well, we still enable that with our integrations. So essentially from here, you can just click, you can integrate with your Zoom account, your Google Meets account, or Jitsi, and you can just directly name a room, name a meeting room, and create your meeting directly from here. So you add the note, maybe what it's relevant for, you create the name of the meeting, then afterwards you send it through. So yeah, I can just show you an example. So example meeting, create, and then it'll take you to a different page. And then essentially, obviously, I'm not going to allow this through since I'm talking on this meeting, but you see here, this link has been created, added as a note, so that people can just click directly from here and join this meeting. So Jitsi is a free software. Google Meet also has a free plan, and so does Zoom, but we are not integrated to the way where we manage those plans. Essentially, when you allow the integration to happen, it essentially uses your account from the other platform. So then we also have, as you've seen here, we also have the ability to add things to folders. So obviously, if you have a lot of spaces here, you're like, how am I going to get organized? This is going to be a lot of spaces. And if I I have 3 project management spaces, what am I going to do? Well, you can just create folders that enable you to put the different spaces into relevant categories. So right now, for example, this is gravel marketing. I put it in marketing, I put it in template because it's an important one, and a group space. But you can just simply type in a new name of a folder here and then filter out your view based on this, so that you only see the relevant information and you keep yourself organized. And obviously, we also have this pin section, which allows you to then put the most important spaces right here, so that you don't have to look through them. You don't have to filter out through them. You can just directly click on them and you can go there. Then you might have a lot of spaces and a lot of tasks, and you're like, okay, but I can't just spend my entire day clicking through all the different spaces and looking what I have to do. Well, you never have to do that in Rock. What we have here is your My Tasks dashboard, and this is a particular dashboard to you. So this shows you, shows you the assigned to me, created by me, followed, or all. So you can basically filter out the time frame that you're looking at based on the tasks. So let's say you're looking at tasks from all the 6 months, and then you want to look at all of them, so also the ones created by you and followed by you, and you want to see, okay, when have they been last updated? And you see them that they're in the to do you see, you can recognize the list here. You can recognize the assignees here. You also can see labels, priorities. So everything that I've shown you previously that is related to the tasks can be found here. And you have this updated section, which you can basically click on and see, okay, well, this is in doing, but it's in doing since February 3rd, and the due date is overdue. Let's just click on this task and see what is going on. And then you can go back to here, at the people that are responsible who have not provided you with a follow-up, and you can just ask them directly here to provide you with more information as to why this is taking so long. So this is essentially, you also have a very similar layout to the list section within each space. So you also have like the completed by me, but you also can look at all the closed tasks. So that's when you're obviously looking a little bit back on the things that have been happening within your company. And you can look at your archive tasks. So essentially when you're done with the task, you can click here and you can archive it so that it's not deleted, but it's out of your site. And then you can go to the My Task section to go back to the My Task section to recover that information. So that will be it from my tasks. Then I think I'm going to hand it back to Greta to round it up and give you a little bit more of the ending tips.
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can also just quickly show the My Notes view, since it's very similar, it's very self-explanatory as well. It's basically just a list of notes that you have across spaces. So both of those views, My Tasks and My Notes, they give you a better idea what's happening across spaces, right? So if you want to know like what notes are in the spaces that you're following, you can go on My Notes. So that's just briefly on that. If we move down to that side panel, we then see the set aside. I think many people at first, they don't really understand what it is because it's really different from other tools. And when I started using it myself, when I realized how useful that is, I really loved it. So it's basically for anything that you want to set aside and come back to later. I think some people, for example, if they manage their work through other communication platforms where you can mark message as unread, sometimes they do it and then they come back to it, but that means you cannot really continue the conversation. You mark it as unread, then you wait because you don't want to come back to that certain task at this point, so it gets sometimes confusing. And what you can do with set aside, you can just select the specific message or a task or a note or a topic. It's possible to do it with anything, but let's start with the messages. If you want to come back to a message later, but you still might want to say something in that space, but just to remember that you have to do something about it, you can click the set aside button next to the message, which you can see now to the screen, and then that message appears in your set aside panel. So whenever you have some free time and you think, okay, now I'm going to come back to things that I always want, like I wanted to come back earlier this week, I can sit down and go through my set aside panel and see what I still have to do, maybe which wasn't prioritized at that point. And once you've done, you can just delete it, clean it up, and then you know that, okay, there is nothing I actually wanted to come back to. So you can see it as unread, mentally unread messages, or a sticky note panel, which you just add things that you want to do later. So that's basically it. I personally find it very helpful. Okay, so yeah, and just to mention that you can also set aside tasks. So if there's a task that you want to come back later, it's not only messages, it's everything across Rock. If we go down then to activity, this bell icon, exactly. So here you can see all activity that happens which is relevant to you. So if there are tasks that you're following, if somebody mentions you, all these things that are directly important to you, not everything that happens across spaces, but everything that's important where you're a follower, where you are an assignee, this is reflected in your activity panel. So if you click on certain activity notifications, you will see what happened, and then you know that that's something relevant. You should follow up and you should check what's happening in that specific task or space, note, anything. So yeah, that's activity. And then just quickly on settings, exactly, if you click on this icon where where your picture is. You have the main settings here. We will not go through everything because it might get detailed, but if you have questions on that, you can always come back to us. The main things that here there is an option to upgrade for you. You can mute notifications, you can manage your notifications as well. Then my contacts, it's basically just the contacts that you have been connected on Rock. Then you can see authorized apps and import. So these are the main settings. If you need something quick to adjust in your account, you go here and then you likely find it. All right, so I think yeah, so these were the main features of Rock, which help you to work more asynchronously and be more action oriented. So we really hope that was helpful. So we are going to stop the recording now, and we are very, very happy to answer any questions you have, because of course it was a lot of new information for you. So if anything is unclear, please feel free to ask. And yeah, it's not going to be recorded, so you can feel more comfortable about this. So yeah, looking forward to receive questions. If you feel more comfortable, you also can just type them in the chat and we can pick them up from there.